It's Rank Week here on the DNVR Rockies podcast, and today we are ranking the top 10 what-ifs in Colorado Rockies history. Stick with us. We got a lot of talking to do about the Colorado Rockies right here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome into the DNVR Rockies special edition show here, presented by Bet365. We are live from the Toyota Lounge for this special edition Rank Week show. We're talking biggest what-ifs in Colorado Rockies history. The show is presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use that code DNVR365. Place a bet for $5. You can get $150 back in bonus bets. Coming to you here live on this special edition show, and we've got a great conversation. As you guys are probably well aware, now that you've seen everything that we're doing across DNVR, we're doing the biggest what-ifs in Colorado sports history. And I would actually make the argument that the Colorado Rockies probably have the biggest what-ifs in all of Colorado sports. And now I understand that, the Broncos, you can hit the whole what if, John Elway was never traded to the Denver Broncos. What if Jokic was never drafted? Like, there are some big what-ifs in some of our other sports, but the Rockies have never won a World Series. They're the only professional team, or at least major professional team here in Colorado, that have never won a World Series. So some of these what-ifs are pretty big because, we're looking at the fact that, the Rockies have never won a World Series. So there's a lot of things that have gone wrong that have caused that.
Yeah, a lot of the other teams' what-ifs, like if you go to the quick, like you mentioned with the Broncos and the Nuggets, or like the Avs with Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon, if they don't get the first pick. A lot of the other teams' what-ifs are like happy to look at because it means they won a championship with that player. That what if they didn't get them? The Rockies, it's a lot more of what if they did get that player and they actually won a championship. So we have the only positive outlook on this show where we don't have to go negative. We can go straight positive on the what if outlook.
Yeah, we can live in the clouds a little bit to say, what if the Rockies, we're not the only team in Colorado that did not have a major championship. And we got close, and we've got a lot of good ones. We're ranking the top 10, at least that DNVR put together. So just to give you guys context at home, DNVR staff put together a list of the top 10 what-ifs for every team, plus some honorable mentions. And then, we all voted, the staff voted on our picks for, what we believe were the 10 biggest what-ifs in that specific sports franchise history. So we've got our DNVR voted 10 biggest what-ifs in Rockies history. Now, I will say, these are all subjective, right? These are all up to debate, up to conversation. It's why we wanted to have this show, so that we could actually come on here and have a conversation on why we put certain things where we did. But we're going to go from pretty much top to bottom. So starting at the 10th, biggest what if, and we'll go down, finishing the show with the number one biggest what if in Rockies franchise history. So we'll dive right into it. This one was kind of thrown in at the last minute, but was an interesting final edition as the 10th biggest what-if in Colorado Rockies franchise history. Number 10, the humidor was never invented. We all know how monumental the humidor was and is to how baseball is as a whole. We're not the only team, in Major League Baseball that uses the humidor. However, you could definitely make the argument that the Colorado Rockies are most impacted by having the humidor in effect because of what that does to baseball at elevation. So would you agree that should have made the list as a big what if in Rockies franchise history?
Yeah, I think the difference of the baseball we would see, which in this season it feels pretty tough, and it feels like other teams hit a lot of home runs and hit the ball pretty damn far. But can you imagine what games would look like at Coors Field if the humidor had never, it was just, they just played. Like, you look at over-unders for those bettors out there, and like MLB's littered with 7.5, 8.5.
Yeah.
Scooble's pitching, it's like 6.5. And then you go to a Rockies game at Coors Field, 11.5, like every time.
Right.
And that is with a humidor. So thinking on the fact that there wouldn't be a humidor ever created, I don't know if it would be good or bad for the Rockies specifically, but it'd be a lot more fun, that's for sure.
I mean, just given the Rockies' history and the fact that we haven't, really had a lot of success, we'll talk more about that as the show goes on. I would think that it actually hurt the Rockies more, but it would be kind of fun. I mean, you talk about the fact that you just see so many home runs at Coors Field. It would be such an anomaly. I mean, think of when they did the home run derby in 2021, it was here in Coors Field, and they didn't use the humidor for the home run derby. It's a home run derby. You're going to see tons of home runs anyways, but just the fact that we could sit there and say, hey, we get to see a home run derby and the baseballs are not being put in the humidor, so it's like they're going to go extra far. There's going to be extra home runs. Just added an extra element, an extra variable of fun. So, yeah, when the humidor was introduced in 2002, like I said, I don't think it would really benefit the Rockies, just given the teams that we've had. Since then, maybe you could have said the Blake Street Bombers, or the 2007 World Series team could have benefited from that for sure. But overall, I think it actually would have hurt the team.
Yeah, the overall team doesn't benefit a ton from it, but there definitely would have been some players, just recently, like some guys like Jason Giambi that came here and did really well. But
yeah.
Imagine all the fly balls he hit to the warning track over his couple of years here, where those are 10 feet out of the stadium. And imagine all the really rough Rockies pitching staffs and tanks they've already given up. I mean, the rooftop would be getting peppered nightly if there was not a humidor.
Instead of being 21-0 against the Padres, it would have been 28-0 against the Padres. Instead of Sam Hilliard's Jack Daniels Terrace home run last year on the final day of the season, it might have left the stadium. I mean, that was a bomb. So, yeah, that's number 10. Moving down the list to number 9. What if the Rockies trade B-Rod, or I actually put in a caveat there, or any other player of similar value to him during their peak trade value? So think of Ryan McMahon during his peak trade value. Think of guys, John Gray, right? Like during times Trevor Story, where you could have gotten value out of players, but the Rockies historically decide, you know what, we're just going to let these players walk. What if you had traded said player? That's a big what if.
Yeah, I think
it's a lot of them too.
It's if we want to go really in the clouds there, you think maybe they could have gotten a prospect that is now on the team and is now an important part of the current Rockies and maybe the future Rockies. But there is, and we'll probably talk about it at some point during the What If show, but there is a trade that the Rockies made with a future Hall of Famer at third base and one of the greatest players in franchise history that they did make. And the what if we got out of it is one major league starter and 6 dudes that we don't know where they are or what
their names no longer exist. Yeah,
exactly. So I'd like to say that the trade of a B-Rod or the trade of a John Gray or the trade of a Trevor Story or the trade. I mean, we could go down this list every trade deadline because there's not a lot of
Elias Diaz after his All-Star MVP.
100%. Like these guys have peak value, and the Rockies held on to them, and now they're left with a lot of the remorse of everyone going somewhere else and continuing to either be as good. And it doesn't happen all the time. Like Brendan Rodgers, we were looking this up in the press box a couple weekends ago. Like he's struggling. He's not. But at the time that he was playing well, if you trade him at that moment, the return that you get back could have been higher than the player that he is now, and multiple players or multiple different shots at the dartboard of players that could have made an impact for the Rockies today.
Yeah, is Jake Bird going to end up going down in Rockies history as another what if the Rockies had traded him and his sub-2 ERA before he, collapsed at Coors Field and then ended up getting shipped off for nothing? Fingers crossed that's not the case.
So this is recency bias because he had such a rough outing this past week in Boston, but he loves pitching at Coors Field. I think his Coors Field ERA is still under 1 or right around 1. Yep. Maybe he just wants to stay here. Maybe he's taking his own trade value.
Yeah. And, maybe by the time the show airs, maybe Jake Bird's no longer on the Rockies. We don't know. But, I think that's a good number 9 because, like you said, you don't know if the Rockies are going to or would have gotten the value that we instill in our perspective of those players. But at the same time, you would have liked to see them try. And because we don't have the ability to see behind the curtain, we have no idea. We didn't, I was sitting here yelling at the screen last year about why they didn't trade Elias Diaz. Turns out they didn't have any suitors calling about Elias Diaz, so they couldn't trade Elias Diaz. So, but it is something that we consistently say, and I think history has shown that it's that the fans and the media are fair in our assessment of how poor the Rockies front office has been in their trades in recent history. So that comes in at number 9. Number 8. This is an interesting and controversial number 8, in my opinion. And I've had some conversations with people, 2 people specifically, who said this should have been their number 1. So I want to get into this. Number 8 on the list of biggest Rockies what-ifs in franchise history. If the Rockies in 2019 were to re-sign DJ LeMahieu, do you agree? That's a big what-if, but do you agree that should be as low on the list as it is?
Yeah, I don't think, he's an important player and was a great player for the Rockies, but you look to, turn the clock to now in 2025, and he's playing for the Yankees, and he had a few great seasons there. I mean,
All-Star a couple years ago.
Yeah, he's won a batting title in both leagues, I believe, or pretty close to it. Won a batting title here. But he's not the player that he once was, and I don't think one second baseman that doesn't hit for power, and not that he's not a good hitter, great hitter, all-star, whatever, but he doesn't change the trajectory of the franchise as much as someone else may have. And so, yes, did it suck to not re-sign him at the time? Yeah, I love DJ LeMahieu. I played second base growing up, and he was like my kind of guy, hitting everything to right field. He was just taking the ball the other way, fun watch, and a great player, great hitter, good at defense, and was in the moment a very happy time because I want to say it was the dude that we traded to get DJ LeMahieu. We traded some dude with red curly hair.
Well, they didn't trade DJ to get DJ. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, to get DJ was like a big deal because the Rockies had won that trade.
Yeah.
They traded, that's going to piss me off. I got to look that up.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's they traded some dude that was supposed to be like a closer, threw pretty hard, and then they got DJ LeMahieu. And then he came here and was an all-star and was winning batting titles. And you're like, the Rockies won a trade. So that was kind of the start of they won a trade. It was that 2017, 2018 time when the Rockies were competing. And you're like, hey, they got something going here. And DJ was the start of that. But after the Nolan stuff, after all this other stuff, it quickly, after DJ left, went downhill. So I don't think it would have affected the current situation or even the last 6 years as much as people think.
So I agree with what you're saying. Yes, if you took DJ LeMahieu currently off the Yankees and put him into the current Colorado Rockies lineup, no, you're right. He doesn't change the world here in Colorado. But the take that I have on this one, and it's very similar to what one of our good friends, Patrick Saunders, writer for the Denver Post, had said. When I asked him this, I told him, hey, we're doing this series coming up. I wanted to get his input. Who do you think and what do you think was your biggest what if in Rockies franchise history? And his number 1 biggest what if was this very one, where he said, what if the Rockies didn't let DJ LeMahieu walk in 2019? Because his point was that everything kind of went downhill. The ripple effect caused by the Rockies pretty much letting DJ walk, and the optics around letting DJ walk in that moment in 2019 caused Nolan Arenado to get kind of frustrated and say, you know what, you guys aren't committed to winning. I want out. And then they ended up trading Nolan Arenado for Pocket Lint, and the rest is history, right? So you could almost trace the demise or the current demise of the Colorado Rockies back to letting DJ walk. And then the flip side of that is we were talking to our buddy Hank, who does the Broncos show. He's going to be with us, on the shows here for the draft and all of that. Hank was reminding us that, the Rockies had come out and said, we don't have the money to re-sign you, DJ, and that's why we're going to let you walk. And so they let DJ walk. Well, DJ ended up going and signing with the New York Yankees for $12 million. Do you remember who signed with the Colorado Rockies, who the Rockies went out and signed for the exact same price tag?
Wasn't it? Is it Daniel Murphy?
It was Daniel Murphy. They signed Daniel Murphy to a 2-year deal, $12 million, and the same season that they let DJ LeMahieu walk, who ended up signing for the same amount of money in New York. So the optics of that looked really bad. Obviously, the next thing you know, Nolan Arenado saying, hey, I want out, and the rest is history. So you could make the argument that DJ LeMahieu deal or no deal truly led to the state of the Rockies and where they are today.
Yeah, and that I just looked up the trade, so I was wrong. It's a different guy that pitched for the Cubs, but they traded Ian Stewart, who Ian Stewart was this prospect that came up. He hit. I remember him hitting an absolute tank grand slam to right field in one of the games I went to when I was 15 years old, whatever, long time ago.
It's ingrained in your memory.
But it was just he hit it so far, and he was our up-and-coming third baseman. And Dan O'Dowd, who those Rockies fans hearing that name are kind of shuddering, and pretty much every GM we've ever had, it's the same feeling. But, yeah, they absolutely heisted DJ LeMahieu, who'd only played like somewhere between 30 and 40 MLB games at that point, for Casey Weathers and Ian Stewart was the trade. And no guys that became nobodies, never even stayed in the MLB. He went on to win batting titles, Silver Sluggers, Gold Gloves.
Still playing.
And still playing. And it was, if you look at it in that light, it does make it hurt a lot worse, because it was the start of, no, it wasn't just, he just happened to be the player, DJ LeMahieu, but it was the start of, we can't afford guys. And then that turns into a bunch of other players that are looking for these major league deals to not even consider the Rockies. Like, it's just the rock that starts the cliff. Yeah. Starts off the cliff and turns into a full rock slide.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching the show, what was it, Narcos on Netflix. I don't know if you ever watched that show about, Pablo Escobar and whatever. And it's fascinating to watch how, Pablo Escobar went from being like the most famous, just rich, untouchable person, and throughout the course of the show, and obviously the real timeline, like there were like little things that he did that like lost him trust here and there, and eventually it ended in the collapse and his eventual death. That's a crazy example of like what happened with DJ LeMahieu, right? Like that was like DJ was like the first thing that like the Rockies were playing really well. It was 2018. They had just come off the playoffs. They had Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon, DJ. You had like this all-star lineup, and it was like that was the first thing that caused them to just, it wasn't the thing that broke them immediately, but it was the first thing that caused that empire, to start to crumble.
That's
just a little
incredible.
Bit. It's a wild analogy.
That's an incredible analogy.
I know.
I've never seen Narcos. I'm telling on myself a little bit here, but I do understand it.
Yeah.
It was like I watched this murder show last night that's like this documentary, and the guy murders people and then goes 30 years without doing it, does it again, but then starts leaving these little breadcrumbs, and it eventually falls to him getting arrested. So same kind of scenario.
So that was the first breadcrumb, man. That was the first card that fell off the deck. Yeah. So that comes in at number 8. Coming up, number 7. We got to hit our first break, but after the break, number 7, and it is a draft what if. So we will get to that coming up next. Well, as you guys are well aware, if you are watchers and viewers here at the DNVR Rockies podcast, we love our friends over at Bet365. They are incredible when it comes to making money off the Colorado Rockies. And it's not just the Rockies. If you're into, the Nuggets, the Avs, the Broncos, or any other team, Bet365 has you covered. You can use that code DNVR365 when you sign up, deposit $10. You can choose between either a bet and get offer by placing a bet of $5, getting $150 back in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer by placing a bet of up to $1,000. If your qualifying bet loses, you receive a match refund in bonus bets. They also have, we don't talk about this a lot, but they do have the MLB early payout offer. Basically, if your team goes up 5 runs or more, you get an instant payout. That was electric, by the way. They do that for other sports. They did that for March Madness, the NCAA tournament, and I don't remember what it was. I think it was like 15. Yeah, if your team went up by 15 points. So there, and how big of comebacks you see in March Madness, and so there was a couple like St. Peter's, got up by 15 and then ended up losing, but you won your bet still. So you can do the same thing with the Bet365 app. Like I said, download that app. Use that code DNVR365. See why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLERS. 1-800-GAMBLER. Also want to give some love to our friends over at Shady Rays. We always talk about seeing things through purple tinted glasses here, and we can literally we could take that into our physical hands. We can actually be literal about that with Shady Rays. Shady Rays, you can customize your sunglasses. You can make them purple. You can make them blue. You can make them green. And you can make them look good. Shady Rays have so many different types of designs and colors and styles that you can choose from, so that not only do you look good, but you feel good. You can actually see when you go outside and it's 100 degrees and the sun's shining in your face. Shady Rays is incredible. And I know we were talking about this, about a week ago. We were talking about how Shady Rays isn't just one of those sunglasses you get one of and you just have as your everyday sunglasses, although you can absolutely do that. But I have like 3 or 4 Shady Rays that are my go-to sunglasses. I have them in my car. I've got them at home. So you can make sure you are never in a situation without sunglasses. They are truly the everyday sunglasses that you can use. They never get old, incredible durability, and they look great. So we've got a deal exclusively for our listeners. Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com, use code DNVR for 35% off those polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades, rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, back here on our special edition DNVR Rockies pod here on Rank Week. Biggest what ifs in Colorado Rockies history, coming in at number 7. What if the Rockies, back in 2006, drafted Clayton Kershaw or Evan Longoria over Greg Reynolds? Both players were on the board, both players were available, and were not drafted because the Rockies took Greg Reynolds. What if? What if?
Let's go full clouds, and Clayton Kershaw is an all-star Hall of Fame 3,000 strikeout level pitcher for the Rockies.
For the Rockies, no
that
less.
Just cooks his whole career. In reality, we probably know what happens. They draft Kershaw. He doesn't develop as well as he did in the Dodgers system, doesn't get to the majors as a Rocky, or becomes...
Or fizzles out, maybe.
Fizzles out, becomes a Rockies ace, and is a guy that we're all excited about in the late 2000s, and then becomes a trade piece that they don't trade. Like there's so many different
there's so many what ifs in this what if.
Yeah, but I don't know how deep you go. We'll probably do this a little closer to our draft show, but don't dive too deep into drafts and see who the Rockies have picked and who goes after that. And especially, like, kudos to the Dodgers. Yes, they have the most money in baseball, and they pay these guys like Ohtani, and they get free agents. But their draft, like, I looked at one first-round draft, and they picked 27th, and it was like every pick was shit except for the 27th pick was like the only player. And maybe that's not only their drafting, but their whole system.
Yeah.
But those guys are good at drafting, and Greg Reynolds is a name that's a deep, deep cut for Rockies fans because they think of the Kershaw, and they think of the fact that Reynolds did pitch a few games in the major leagues and was at the time like, okay, this is the kid that you're maybe staking your rotation to for the next 10 years. And I don't even know if he made it one season in the MLB, maybe 2. He was terrible.
Yeah. And Evan Longoria too, same boat. He's no Clayton Kershaw, but he's a multiple all-star, one of the best position players offensively, defensively in his time. And he was another guy that kind of, he was with the Rays, and did he win a World Series with the Rays? I can't remember if he did. I feel like he did. I feel like that's what I'm remembering. But either way, he was on some good and some bad teams with the Rays. And so, if the Rockies had drafted him, the Rockies, this was 2006, so he wouldn't have been there with the World Series run, obviously. Neither of these players would have been there in the World Series run. But there was a kind of window of bad seasons after 2007 until you got back into the 2017-2018 playoff push. So it's not to say that the Rockies could have turned things around if they just got, an all-star player like Longoria or a future Hall of Famer legend like Clayton Kershaw, but it would have certainly helped, and it at least lays the groundwork to being in a better position.
Well, and the Longoria stuff can go even deeper in the terms of if you have Longoria and he's the Evan Longoria that we all saw with the Rays and then with the Giants, etc., maybe Nolan Arenado never makes the MLB. Or he gets traded, or Nolan Arenado's a shortstop or a second baseman. Because if you have Longoria, you're not going to bring up a guy like Nolan and just like, yeah, Evan, you're not playing third base anymore. He's good enough and had a good enough career in these other places where you wouldn't do that. So looking up Evan Longoria, did not win he has not won a World Series. He's played in 2, one in 2008 and one in 2023, lost both of them, and has the longest stretch between 2 World Series for any player in MLB history that he's played in.
Interesting. Yeah, he's an incredible player, man. Both of those guys you can't go wrong with. So big what if. Moving down to number 6. This is a what if that will reign near and dear to all of our hearts, and I'm sure you guys at home will love this as well. Number 6. What if the Rockies do not sign Chris Bryant. It's a big what if. However, that being said, it's number 6, and the reason it's not higher than that is because even if, let's say, they signed a much better player, let's say you sign someone who's an all-star, let's say you go sign, gosh, I don't even know. Like, let's just say here the Rockies had signed Mookie Betts, right? Incredible player. I think they're in the same boat they are now, and I think Mookie's just pissed.
Yeah, you know? I agree, and I think they're in the same boat on the field. I do, however, think if the Rockies don't sign Chris Bryant, their perception as a team goes drastically up these last 3 to 4 years, because Chris Bryant, like him or love him, if you're a Cubs fan, you like him. If you're a Rockies fan, you hate him, or you are indifferent to him. Hate's a bad word. You're indifferent to him.
I think there's a lot of Rockies fans who hate Chris Bryant.
Yeah, which is fair.
He makes a lot of money.
But he's the guy that up until this year, he's the guy for the last 3 to 4 years that has carried the Rockies media carried the boat for the Rockies in terms of national media. When they talk about the Rockies the last 3 years, they talk about Chris Bryant first. That's the guy, that's the name that they went out and signed, maybe ill-advised, definitely ill-advised. At the time, not so ill-advised. Now that we have hindsight, that's always 2020. We know it was ill-advised. But their view from the outside perspective in the national media would be a lot higher if they had never signed Chris Bryant, because they wouldn't be sitting here with like let's pay a guy that we went out of our comfort zone and actually paid someone to play for the Rockies a lot of money because we kind of had to. Like, he's admitted that he didn't necessarily do a ton of research. The Rockies just threw a bag at him, and he came here and hasn't been good, obviously. But that was a move that kind of got the Rockies out of their comfort zone, and now is hurting them in a national media spotlight because of how bad and pure absentee that he's been. But it also has probably scared the Rockies in their front office from making a few moves in the last couple of years because of how bad that went.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you talk about them cutting payroll over the last year and a half. Chris Bryant takes up a large chunk of that. He's getting paid a lot of money. And I think you're right. The optics of the Chris Bryant deal have been detrimental to what the Rockies are as an organization. I think a lot of these what-ifs come back to optics. Yes, there's talent involved. Yes, Chris Bryant is not the player that you initially gave just shy of $200 million to, but the optics are the bigger aspect of this. Like you said, other players it's just reminding players why they don't want to come sign with Colorado. It's reminding free agents why they don't want to come here, reminding draft picks why they don't want to sign or get drafted by the Colorado Rockies. And Chris Bryant is a more recent version of that. You had Nolan Arenado before that, which we'll talk about later. You had, you can insert here your players and deals that have been made that have caused distrust within the media and the fan base. Yeah, he is your most recent one.
He is the most recent one, and he for the foreseeable future, maybe the last one. Because if you think about it, like the Rockies before the Chris Bryant signing, they used to do this all the time. Now they signed guys the last couple of years that we've like the Kyle Farmers, the Nick Martinis, the Tyro Estradas, smaller level deals, maybe decent players, but they used to be they went out and got Justin Morneau. They went out and got Michael Kadire. They went out and got Ian Desmond. They went out and got Daniel Murphy. Like, they had a track record of getting these vets, which at the time when you're having a bad season, it looks like a bad move, and then you don't trade them, which makes it a worse move at the deadline. But the Rockies have always signed these vets that nobody wants to play, but they end up playing. But before Chris Bryant, all of these players came to Colorado, and outside of Daniel Murphy and kind of Ian Desmond, the whole COVID thing was weird with him, but outside of those two players, like Kadire came here and was an all-star. Justin Morneau came here and hit a bunch of home runs. Like, we had a good track record of signing these vets. And now with the Bryant signing, that was the biggest one in terms of name, his career, his history, and also dollar value towards the organization. And now it seems like they're strictly keeping themselves to 1 year, $4 million max deals.
Draft to develop. Yeah. Oh, it's crazy, man. So that's number 6. You could argue that might be a little lower, but I'm putting that at number 6. Number 5, the Rockies win game 163 in 2018, and they win the division. Now, obviously, we know what happened in 2018. That wild card, series didn't go the way we expected. You were there, right?
I was at game 163.
Yeah. if they
no, not the one against the Dodgers. I was at the one against the Padres at home.
Gotcha.
That they won before the World Series in 07.
Gotcha. Okay. So 163 in 2018 and won the division. It changes a lot of things. I mean, obviously, the biggest what if of that is you would have moved into the next round of the playoffs. You would have moved into the first round of the playoffs. And you look at the roster of that Colorado Rockies team in a 5-game series or is it 7-game series in that first?
It would have been a 5-game.
5-game series. That roster for a 5-game series feels very competitive.
Yeah, well, and they still ended up making the playoffs that year because they went and beat the Cubs in Wrigley 2-1. Tony Walters will be a forever GOAT for his base hit up the middle in the 11th or 12th inning. But they beat the Cubs, and I believe Tyler Kinley got the save on that, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
I forgot
Tyler
about
Kinley.
Kinley was actually really good
him and
at
Freeland
one
are
point.
like the only two left. And what is it? Herman, Freeland.
And Herman started that game 163 against the Dodgers in Los Angeles. The biggest what if on this is I'll be straight here. Once the Rockies win one World Series, I'm good forever.
Yeah.
You can blow me off the face of the earth and I'm fine. That's why 07, which we'll get to, hurts so bad because if the Rockies if we were in this exact moment right now, but the 07 World Series had just flipped, what if? I wouldn't be near as
bitter
as I am, and near as angry as I am at the team most of the times because I'd be like, we won a World Series in my lifetime, life is good. But since they didn't win that World Series, all of these things just hurt that much worse because I can't fall back on my a Cowboys fan would, or we won this many Super
or even
Bowls.
the Nuggets, you know? I mean, if the Nuggets all of a sudden just sucked tomorrow, which is impossible with Jokic, but if they all of a sudden suck tomorrow, you can be like, we won an NBA championship.
We won a title. And and so that what if when it comes to the 163 is the same scenario as it's not as big of a deal, but if you hear, same with, like you said, optics, and you hear national media, the Rockies have never won a division title. We wouldn't have to hear that. That would be great.
And it feels, as of now, like we will never, ever win a division title. You're in the same division as the Dodgers, who have unlocked pretty much an unlimited winning power. They've unlocked the formula to winning games.
They've gotten the 5th Infinity Stone.
They quite literally have. They're inevitable at this point. So it's their only realistic way of getting into the playoffs is to get through the wild card at some point down the line. And so that is the closest you'll ever be to winning the division. That's a big what if. That is a big what if. Got to hit our next break. After the break, though, we get into Rockies ownership. That is, as we head down the list. Number 4 coming up next. Want to give some love to our friends right now over at Game Time, because if you are going to any games now that we are just finishing up the All-Star break, the Rockies are going to be coming back into town. Hey, maybe you want to enjoy some baseball before this season ends. Whatever enjoying baseball looks like for you, Game Time is the place to go to get your tickets. Game Time makes it easier, faster to get tickets, and they also have incredible deals. Not only do they have good deals, but as you know, if you've heard me say it a million times, the tickets get cheaper as you get closer and closer to first pitch. You can go, still go up to the rooftop, drink some nice cold refreshing beer before the game, and still get cheap tickets with the Game Time app. And I'll also go even beyond that. Maybe you don't want to go to Rockies games because the Rockies are a tough watch sometimes. Maybe you want to go to our friends over at the Rapids. You want to go to some MLS games. Game Time has incredible deals with them too. Really, anywhere you want to go when it comes to live sporting events, even live events in general, Game Time likely has you covered. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code DNVR for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We'll also want to give some love to one of our new friends here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. That's Cake Mortgage, because if you are in if you're in the world of buying a new home, you got to get approved, as you know, for a home loan. And that can be challenging if you have a non-traditional income like myself. If you're someone who, doesn't have a typical 9-to-5 job, you've got a lot of different revenue streams. Maybe you own your own business. Maybe you're a freelancer. Maybe you're a contractor. We know there's a lot of contractors out there who don't get paid consistently. And it's hard to prove all of that consistent income. And a lot of times the banks won't view that as income. They didn't for me when I went to go buy my house a couple of years ago. They said about a quarter of my income was not actually listed as income. So it was really hard for my wife and I to get approved to buy a house that we wanted, that we could afford, because the banks weren't looking at our income in the full picture. So Cake Mortgage, they really make sure that you validate your cash flow and that you can take advantage of all of your different revenue streams. So head to the link in the description to get started. That's Cake Mortgage Corporation, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1734623, licensed in Colorado by the Division of Real Estate. Terms and conditions apply. All right, finishing the next four, the final four. We'll do our next three, and then we'll finish the show with our final biggest what if in Rockies history. Number 4, what if Dick Monfort never bought majority ownership in the Colorado Rockies? Now, this is an interesting one because the Rockies are a baseball team in Colorado. You could make the argument because Dick Monfort and the Monfort family invested in the team and put down their roots here in Colorado back in 2005. But at the same time, you can make the argument that the failures within the Rockies organization, the systemic failures that go beyond just a bad move here or there, no, a systemic failure that the organization has been over the last 20 years. It's been 20 years since Dick Monfort purchased the Colorado Rockies in 2005. You could put a lot of that on the ownership group, on the front office. I don't think that's far-fetched to say. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword where you say on one hand, Dick Monfort is the reason we have baseball in the state of Colorado. And on the other hand, the Rockies suck largely because of the ownership style of Dick Monfort. It's a big what if he was to not be the owner and not buy ownership in 2005.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword even thinking about the fact that the Rockies are in Colorado and I have had to be a fan for 30 years. While there has been a few good moments here and there, like the peril of being a Rockies fan doesn't compare to any very few sports teams out there in the major four in America compared to being a Rockies fan. And not only is Dick Monfort has been a relatively bad owner, but it's the optics again, man.
A misguided owner, we'll say that.
How many people know who owns X mediocre team in the MLB? Barely anybody. But he's so bad that people know who he is.
Yeah.
And the whole fan base knows who he is, obviously, which is not necessarily a great thing. If you're just a casual fan and you watch what's on the field, you immediately blame him first. But at the same time, like flipping this into putting my purple color shady rays on, not having a baseball team here would be tragic for the state, for Coors Field, like all the great that has come with baseball outside of the lines, outside of the foul poles and the giant outfield at Coors Field. The thought of losing this baseball team or not having this baseball team in Colorado, talking about what if, my whole life may be different.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, now being
Mine
31
would.
and yeah.
I mean, that's literally my job.
Right. And now being 31, being able to talk about the Rockies and do a Rockies show with you is like incredible. But I like my whole childhood was based around me traveling and playing baseball and being inspired to do that and play baseball, got into baseball because of the Colorado Rockies. So my specific to myself, what if is like, maybe I'm a giant, I am a big basketball fan, football, this other stuff, but like the Rockies are still my team. And every time I tell somebody that, they say I'm fucking crazy. And I'm like, I know, I get it. I grew up loving baseball. I grew up playing baseball every weekend, practices, travel teams, all this stuff. And going to Coors Field was like my mecca. And so it changes my whole life drastically, I think. Yeah.
And we had one of our good friends, Mr. Purple, on the show, about a month ago. And he had, I wouldn't say praised the Monforts, but acknowledged the value of the Monforts bringing a baseball team or solidifying a baseball team in the state of Colorado. And you're right. Anyone who says, any bitter Rockies fan or Rockies hater that goes online and says the Rockies, Colorado doesn't deserve to have a baseball team, the Monforts suck, they need to sell the team, Colorado shouldn't even have a baseball team. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. However, you're flat out wrong. I mean, baseball is incredible here in Colorado. And when baseball is good, the fan base, we know how incredible this fan base is with our other sports. When baseball is good in Colorado, it is on another level. And to have this idea of, like you said, this alternate reality of there being no baseball in Colorado, you talk about, the Dodgers have all the Infinity Stones. If we're going to use an Avengers, example, like when Thanos snaps his fingers and like half the population just disappears. If we were to just snap our fingers and the Rockies were to disappear, it would feel empty in Colorado in the summer, no matter how bad this team is. So yes, I understand people are frustrated with how bad the team is and how poorly run this organization is. But at the same time, it still doesn't compare to if we did not have baseball in Colorado. So the biggest what if is if we didn't have baseball in Colorado. You have to at least acknowledge the fact that we have baseball here and still, voice your concern and opinions around the ownership needing to do more. There are some crazy, kind of things to look at when it comes to this ownership group. The Rockies have been in 9 playoff games since Monfort took over. They are 2-7 in those games. They have never won a playoff series, a full playoff series. And the Rockies have only been over 500 5 times in the 20 years that Monfort has been an owner. So the faults are there. It's not like we're sitting here saying he's a good owner, but you have to also recognize the fact that baseball exists in Colorado because of the Monforts.
Yeah, and we've seen it happen in professional sports the last couple of years. I mean, St. Louis lost their football team. Seattle, they're going to get it back, but lost their basketball team.
It's brutal, man.
It's as much as you love to hate on the Rockies, and everyone does, and it's not misguided. I won't say that, but at the same time, you don't know what you have till it's gone, and I can't. As bad as the season is, and we have to watch the games every night, and we're sitting there pulling our hair out, and we're talking about it a couple times a week and figuring out what we're going to talk about and how we can not just go full crash out mode during every night during the games when we're not on camera, and then during the hour show when we are on camera. To me, it's better than having nothing.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a bad thing. I've had a couple people reach out to me or comment on something and be like, I don't know how you cover this team. And it's like, yeah, sure. I wish they were better, but I get to cover a professional baseball team for a living. I'm all right. There are worse jobs to have. All right, moving down the list. Number 3. This is a big one. I fully feel like you could make this number 1. It's coming in at number 3, and we'll explain why. What if the Rockies win the 2007 World Series? You could go further with that, with your example of what if the Rockies don't have a long break after winning the National League Championship Series.
The Cleveland Indians can suck it.
I know. So what if the Cleveland Indians don't? Yeah.
I hate CC Sabathia. I hate that whole team. They ruined our lives. They ruined my life.
Because, the Rockies had, 8 days off?
Yeah, 8 days off in between games. They were the hottest team in baseball for a month and a half. I thought they were going to just
They looked unbeatable.
Whoever they played in the World Series. And the Red Sox come back. And now what if there's multiple roads I can go down? I wouldn't hate the Red Sox. I hate the Red Sox right now. Watching the Rockies as we speak play in Fenway, I'm like, none of these players are the same. But it's the same franchise, same stadium. And I'm like, this is a house of horrors for us. I hate this. Because if we win that, like I said earlier, everything that happened the last 18 years, my life would have been just that much more gravy if the Rockies had won a World Series, and I could just I could die happy. But now I don't know if I'm gonna be able to die happy because the Rockies have no clear path to. It feels like I am hopeful my son gets to see a World Series, and he's just turned 2. I'm 30 years ahead of that, and I don't know if it's gonna happen.
I know it's a long way away. That is the biggest part of this. What if? What if the Rockies win the 2007 World Series? All of the pain, the frustration, the anger, don't get me wrong, we would still be upset. We would still be angry about where the Rockies are as an organization, as a franchise today. But if the Rockies win the World Series in 2007, the tone shifts. Because like you said, you can always look back on this, we've won the World Series. The Chicago White Sox are a perfect example of this. They won the World Series in whatever year it was.
03, I think.
03, sure. We'll go with that. They won the World Series. They are a terrible team. Everyone's pissed. They were the laughingstock of baseball last year. However, you can always go back on when we lost 2 out of 3 to the White Sox just a few days ago. Let's say we were to sweep the White Sox and we were out there talking smack, all this kind of stuff. The White Sox could always fall back on the argument that, we've won a World Series and you didn't, right? I grew up in Seattle. I grew up around a lot of Mariners fans. I would even consider myself a casual Mariners fan. And I, from a Mariners perspective, cannot say that I've ever won a World Series. My team that I had liked growing up in the Seattle Mariners, or at least that I watched growing up in the Seattle Mariners, never won a World Series. So it's the same thing as the Colorado Rockies, where it's like you just, no matter all the ups and downs, for me going through the Ichiro Suzuki era, the Ken Griffey Jr., the Felix Hernandez era, Still didn't win a World Series. So you just can't make that argument.
You can't put your stamp on history. Like, nobody cares about winning a National League pennant. Other than the Rockies. That thing is flying high in the bowels of Coors Field. We see it every time we walk to the press box. That 2007, and it's also on the right field, like I think right above the first deck. That 07
Oh yeah,
little
it's in all
pennant.
of our highlight packages. It's in every nostalgic moment of Coors Field.
Yeah, and that's about all we got.
That's all we got. All right, moving down. Number 2, before we hit our last break. Number 2, this one is a big optics one in my opinion, because I think although there is ramifications from a playing perspective, I think this one has solely to do with optics. What if the Rockies did not trade Nolan Arenado?
It's still tough to talk about because it was one of those situations where I still know in my heart, and I'm going to say this, I've never, I don't think, said this out loud, like, Nolan's right. But at the time, it felt like the Rockies were on such an upward trajectory, 2017, 2018, and then it slowly started to kind of crash down. But we always had Nolan. Nolan was the guy that you legitimately thought, like, baseball is a team sport, much like every other sport that we talk about here at DNVR. You have to have a good team to win a title, but when you have to start with that guy, and Nolan was that guy for the Rockies. He was a guy that won a Gold Glove every year. He was 100 RBIs every single year. The great moments, the Father's Day walk off, and all these things that Nolan brought to the Rockies. Once he was gone, not only was it a bad look for ownership and a bad look that they everybody has this idea that they're cheap, and they're not wrong, but then they're paying $50 million along with trading him, along with getting a bunch of guys back that meant nothing to the next 5 years, and other than Austin Gomber, mean relatively nothing to the Rockies now. And like you said, an optics scenario of trading your best player, not only because you think it's better for your organization, but because he was vocal about where the organization was going, where it was at after they made the playoffs for a few years, and the fact that it signaled to the whole world basically that they didn't give a shit about winning. And not that their actions never did that, but that was a clear cut from your star player. I do not want to be here anymore because this team doesn't care about winning. I want to go win. He hasn't won a playoff game or series since he left the Rockies,
you feel good.
which makes me feel great.
Yes.
But the point still stands that when the whole thing went down, I still remember exactly where I was. I was in the Hertz rental car line in Phoenix going on a golf trip. I saw Nolan got traded, and I felt immediately like, God, I hope these guys we got are really good. And none of them were. And, not only that, but it just signaled to the whole world that this team is there. If they're going to trade their best player and he's going to come out and say that I don't want to be here anymore, then why would anyone else want to be here?
I think the Nolan Arenado trade truly lost the Rockies a large chunk of fans. I think we have a couple people here at DNVR who I've talked to and even had on the show before who have straight up said, like, yeah, I used to have season tickets. I used to go to every single game. They traded Nolan Arenado. I saw the fallout of that, and I said, I'm done. And I haven't come back ever since. I casually will go to a game, once a year, and that's it. And I was a season ticket holder. I would go to every single game. And I think there's a lot of people out there who felt that way, where they're like, yeah, we still have a baseball team in Colorado, and if they become good again, I'll go back. But until they prove otherwise, I'm out. And that was 2021. It is 2025 now. The Colorado Rockies are on pace to be the worst team in the history of baseball, and nothing has gotten better. You have not done anything to show us that you have learned from your mistake. Because like you said, your star player was fully within his right to see how you handled that DJ LeMahieu deal, how you let DJ LeMahieu walk for nothing, and then went and signed Daniel Murphy for the same amount of money that you should have given to DJ LeMahieu. And then, your star player comes out and says, hey, I want to win here. I want to live here for the rest of my life. I saw a video of him saying, I want to retire here in Colorado, but I need this team to show up, and I need this organization to be better. And the Rockies said, you know what? Good luck to you. We don't appreciate the way you're talking to us. We don't like the tone you're using with us. So we're gonna pay for you to go somewhere else, and we're gonna give a big old middle finger to our entire fan base in the process. And the Rockies lost a hell of a lot of fans from that, and they have not gained those fans back. you could very much make the argument that should be the number one biggest what if. It is not on our list, but that is a very easy number 2, at least.
100%. Yeah, and signaling to your whole fan base that, because this was so public when what Nolan said, and he was very like fiery, which I love.
Good.
He was fiery about wanting to win, and like you said, wanting to retire and win in Colorado. And instead of, even if they would have the next 2 to 3 years went out and signed a few guys and it didn't work out and they never won, at least it shows that they were like, okay, well, we're being backed into a corner here by our franchise cornerstone, one of the best players to ever put on a Rockies uniform. Let's at least try to dig our way out of it. Instead, they waved the white flag immediately, decided that they don't want to deal with the pressure of winning, which is insane.
It felt like petty almost, where it was like, oh, you talk bad about us, we're getting rid of you.
Yeah, we're going to trade you for a bunch of guys that are going to help us win a World Series going forward.
Well, and look, there's different types of bad, relationships, right? Let's use the Rafael Devers, situation, for example, which is, we're seeing more and more from that every day. Rafael Devers, his issues with the Red Sox were not him trying to hold the Red Sox to a higher standard. It was him saying, I just don't want to do these things. I don't want to play first base. You guys are telling me I have to play first base. I just don't want to, right? That's a bad look on the player. The Red Sox handled it the way they handled it. Maybe it wasn't a great look on the Red Sox. It's kind of a lose-lose situation for both. This was like Nolan going out and saying, I want to win here, and this organization, I don't like the way that they're handling things right now. I don't think the organization is here to win. And instead of the Rockies going out and saying, look, we're sorry you feel that way. Let's go and prove you wrong. Let's go and show you that we have this organization's best interest in mind. They said, you know what, we can't handle that. We're going to get rid of him. So the optics of all of that was just crazy, and it still haunts them today. And I think it really just adds to the argument that we still have to this day of that the Rockies front office is so insular. They're so, from a ownership down, is so in their own little world, operating in their own little bubble, that they feel like the reality of the world around them doesn't exist, and that only what they see in front of them and how they feel about things is the way things are. And that was a prime example of that. And everyone else with a brain saw what was happening and was like, that's like, hey, he's right. Like, that's not how this should go. And the Rockies organization said, nope, we're doing things a different way. So that's a big one. Number 2. Got to pause. We're going to pause for about 3 seconds. After the break, we will get to our number 1 biggest what if and the DNVR's what ifs, biggest what ifs in Rockies franchise. We'll pause for a quick moment and hit on that in just a second. All right, number 1, biggest what if in Colorado Rockies franchise history. The Rockies have been a thing since 1993. This was determined the number 1 biggest what if. It might be controversial, but we'll get into it. What if the Rockies lose game 163 in 2007 and never make a playoff run? Or what if Matt Holliday is called out at home?
So I'm going to go kind of a different way than everybody thinks on this. Is this might actually, him touching home plate and them going on this playoff run might actually, in the moment, felt like the greatest thing of all time. I was at that game. The elation of that was something I've seen a Super Bowl, seen an NBA championship, seen a Stanley Cup. That was up there, even though it was only a wild card game, if you will, or a play-in game, an extra game of the season. But that might have actually made it worse on the 2025 Rockies and their fan base. Because if they never go on that run, what that signaled is, as crazy as that sounds, because it feels like it was 20 years ago, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
That little blip of a hot September rolling into Rocktober, and the Rockies just becoming like everybody's favorite team that didn't have a dog in the fight at that point. Everybody wanted to cheer for the underdog Rockies. I still believe that since it's the same ownership group, a lot of the same people are still in the organization, that they believe that they can do this and win a World Series the way they're doing things because of this one run that they had in 2007.
Yeah.
So maybe if we could go back and say he's out, maybe Dick Monfort doesn't own this team anymore. Maybe they do things differently and they had won a World Series after 2007 and maybe 2017 or maybe 2020 or 2021, whatever it ends up being. Like, this could have drastically changed the trajectory of the franchise as a whole based on the fact that I believe, I truly believe, if you could get Rockies ownership and brass and whoever, still manages the team that was part of the team in 07 or still is around the team, that they think that run shows that they can build a winning product the way they're doing things, and they're still riding that 20 years later.
Yeah. And I think you can also, I think this is why it ended up being our number one, because you're totally right. And that's a fascinating way of looking at it. The other side to this too is if they don't, make that run, the Rockies never make it to the World Series. And yes, we can't sit here and say that the Rockies have ever won a World Series, but at the same time, you can at least say the Rockies have been to a World Series. That is something to at least hang your hat on to a degree. And so you don't have that history there. You lose that history if that never happens. You lose the joy of what Rocktober was. And you, like you said, you got a taste for it. If Matt Holliday gets called out at home in game 163 and you don't make that run at all, Rocktober might not even exist. I mean, because the next playoff run wasn't until 2017, 2018. Does Rocktober become a thing then? That, it doesn't exist at that point. So although, yes, they didn't ever make the peak, the ultimate championship, winning a World Series, it still changes everything else. And so there was some hot, I will say, because I know we're pre-recording this, so unfortunately we can't see comments live. But for those of you watching at home, if you feel like this was not number one, it was a hotly debated one. This was not everyone's number one pick. And personally, I'd like to go on record and say it probably wasn't my number one either, but it was at least in the top three. That would be a huge, huge change if that was not the case.
Yeah, and it would be, if being a Rockies fan in 2025 and being able to hang your hat on even an 07 NL pennant is still something to hang your hat on. I think, looking at it from the other side of the lens, it could be an even darker timeline. If they don't make that run and we don't have anything to hang our hat on. We already don't have a division
2018, title. That's it.
Yeah, we don't have a division title. We have one wild card win since 2009, because I believe they went back to the playoffs in 2009 and I think lost in the divisional round. But we have quite literally nothing to hang our hat on if it's not for Matt Holliday touching home plate. Or
God
not
love him.
Which he did touch home plate. Let's get that out there as well.
I asked him last year. He reminded us. He reminded us. He was pretty confident. If it was up to me, if we weren't doing this as a vote here on DNVR, my number one, truly, and maybe this is recency bias, but I had a lot to say on it just a few seconds ago, was the Nolan trade. And it is recency bias. And if I'm being completely transparent with you guys, I didn't grow up in Colorado. The Rockies are my adopted team. So I don't have the same, my experience with the Rockies is recency bias, and so the Nolan trade, I was here in Colorado. I was in college when it happened, or I'd just gotten out of college when it happened. And I remember that viscerally. And so that was my number one. I think it just changed the optics and the trajectory of this organization as a whole. What would your number one be if you had to choose? Would it be the one that we have, or would it be something different?
I think if I had to go number one, it would be what if the Rockies had won the 07 World Series.
Sure.
So I think that's the one that it would have drastically changed what I talk about to these days. I'd probably have all the merch that I never got and that got sent to a third world country, all of that stuff.
Some Rockies World Series champion kid out there.
I would have all of that stuff, and I would be able to legitimately, I'm not being facetious here. There's a 10% part of my body that's constantly terrified that the Rockies will never win a World Series in my lifetime.
You
for
wake
how
up
much
at night.
I invest in this team.
Yeah. You wake up late at night and you're just wake up in a cold sweat. The Rockies will never win a World Series.
Yeah. And I my mind goes, I've done research on all these teams that had really bad seasons in other sports. And, we've seen over 31 years old is not old, but I've seen enough of I've seen the Spurs be really bad recently. I've seen the Spurs be a dynasty. I've seen the Warriors be really bad. I've seen the Warriors be a dynasty. I've seen the Chiefs be really bad. Seen the Chiefs be a dynasty. So I'm confident.
The Nuggets.
Semi-confident. Yeah, Nuggets were terrible when I started going to games consistently in 2013, 2014. Not a good team. And then grew to this good team and then went back down and then got Jokic. So I'm confident that at some point in my lifetime it'll happen, but 07, I wouldn't be having nightmares still about I still remember, like, the stuff I don't remember much from my childhood at all, but I remember having a conversation with my neighbor as I was walking my dog in '07. I'm 12 years old. And I was like, he's like, we just got to get one in Boston. I was like, yep, just one. And they get swept, and like it still haunts me to this day.
That's the piece of it. It's like you feel panicked, like, because you don't know if it'll ever happen. Like I feel the same way, or at least, felt the same way about the Mariners, where I was, it's like, I don't know if it'll ever happen. The Mariners last year and the last couple of years have looked really good, and they still can't even make it into the playoffs. They can't even get past the wild card, And so I'm like, man, if the Mariners, who have the best pitching rotation in baseball, and it took 20 years for the Mariners to get that. They went to the World Series in 2001, and they did not get back to the playoffs until 2 years ago, and it was a wild card game. It took them 20 bleeping years to get even remotely close, and they're still not even there. Like, that's the panic that I have with the Rockies, is I'm like, I don't know if they're ever going to do it.
Yeah, and where we were, and ironically, the Red Sox are a good example, because they didn't win one for. There's multiple people that grew up in Boston that were born in probably the 30s that never saw the Red Sox win
or the
a title.
Cubs.
Or the Cubs, yeah. Same thing. But we didn't have to live through all that, and so sometimes I'll remind myself that, hey, the Rockies are only 30 years old. I was born in '93. The Rockies started in '93, so I'm just as old as the Rockies, and I try to remind myself sometimes, like, hey, they're only 30 years old. There's not a lot of history there. It's slowly getting to that, as I get to be 40, 50 years old. But I think the tough part to swallow, too, is that the Diamondbacks and the Marlins started after the Rockies and have both won World Series. Yeah. So that part makes it even worse in that light of just winning one. Just get one.
It's tough, man. It is tough. So yeah, that's 1 through 10. We have an article up on the website that you can go through our entire rankings of this, as well as all of our other DNVR teams, or Colorado teams, I should say. Our other DNVR beats put together their lists and also kind of did an article. So all of that is available for diehards on the DNVR website. Head to thednvr.com, and you can check out all of our Rank Week stuff there. Rank Week coverage will continue as this week goes on. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, talking a little baseball. This was fun. This was good. It feels like an off-season conversation, but it was nice to do a little special edition show.
Yeah, it's nice to like recall back on some good but
on
memories
how painful
that
things are.
now make it so much more painful, and just talk about the good old days of the Rockies. Because believe it or not, if you're a Rockies fan that's recent, there was some good teams. There was some really good players, some good teams, some fun seasons at Coors Field back in the day. So kind of fun to relive that.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next time. This has been the DNVR Rockies podcast, presented by Bet365.